Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to 2021. This is Steve Larson, the greenhouse and nursery crop specialist for Bayer here in the southwestern United States. Hope all of you are doing well, staying safe. Hope you had a great holiday season and are ready to hit the ground running here in 2021. With the pandemic still continuing, it looks like my travel restrictions will remain in place, and so I probably won't be doing much traveling for the first several months of the year. And so one of the things that I was hoping I could do was to film a few relevant pest management segments for you. Try to get in front of you virtually, even if I can't be there physically. You'll have to put up with all of the background noise here. I'm taping in my backyard, and it seems like all the guys that have descended on our neighborhood to cut grass today, so I've got a lot of background noise. But that's just the way it is. We finally have a beautiful sunny day here, and it's been the first one we've had in a while, so I want to take advantage of it, get out of my backyard and take in some fresh air and tape a segment for you. First topic I wanted to address is really based on a question I get all the time, which is which pre-emergence herbicide should I be using and when should I be making the application? As you know, we're the manufacturers of Marengo, which I think is a great product that has a broad spectrum of activity, good crop safety, fantastic longevity, and it fits nicely into a rotation, and I'll be talking about that specifically. But there's a couple of factors that come into play when we're trying to make decisions about what we should be using, one of which is crop safety. Everybody's products operates a little bit different. Crops have different tolerances to different pre-emergence herbicides, and we're certainly not excluded from that list. But one thing that I know from having worked with Marengo these last few years with Bayer is that once we have a well-established product, a well-established plant, we tend not to have too many issues with regards to crop tolerance. And I think that's something to really keep in mind. If you have plants that are well established, in other words, they're robust plants, they have good root systems, established root systems, you should have a fairly high degree of confidence when you're putting out your pre-emergence herbicides, in particular with Marengo. Now I'm going to address another topic here, and I'll use an illustration to do that here in just a second. But the other has to do with seasonality of weeds. One of the influencing factors on which product to select has to do with the seasonality of weeds. This simple slide here just shows you some examples of the types of weeds we might encounter during different seasons of the year. And as you know, most herbicides have strengths and weaknesses as to which weeds they control. And so one of the things we want to try and do is to match a herbicide's strengths to the seasonal weeds that it's going to encounter during the season that it's applied. All right, well now we're ready to start with our applications and a little bit more about the timing of those applications. First application obviously is going to go out in the spring, and so we want to try to match up with a herbicide that has good efficacy on the kinds of weeds that you'd be encountering during the spring time frame. I would recommend that you use Marengo. It's a great choice for the spring for a couple of reasons. Not only does it meet that criteria for controlling the spring type weeds, but also it's got great longevity, and that longevity really will help you during the spring because we can make a treatment early in the spring and not have to worry about weed control until we get into the early summer because of the longevity of Marengo. That's a real advantage to Marengo, and it's something that you ought to consider in your rotation. One of the things we also want to consider doing is the timing of that application in the early spring. And again, I'm going to illustrate that here in just a second, but I want to emphasize that you're going to want to begin your application prior to the spring season starting. And the reason for that is because we have a lot of activities going on in the spring, especially when you get into shipping season. You start spacing plants, you have potting going on, pruning, all kinds of activities early in the spring. And so time and labor is a real valuable commodity during the spring months, and so let's make sure that we're taking care of our weed control kind of in advance of that before we get into the spring season. Let's get started with our first treatment of the year, and that's the springtime application. And I'm going to recommend that we utilize Marengo pre-emergence herbicide for that time frame. Because of the demands for labor during the spring months, one of the recommendations that I make is that you make your pre-emergence herbicide application with Marengo actually in the late winter while the plants are still dormant. That way we can take advantage of available labor during a little bit slower time of the year, so that when we get into the busy shipping season, which also includes spacing, pruning, canning, all those other springtime activities, you'll have the labor available for those tasks rather than for weed control. Well, as you know, I manage a very large territory. I've got a fourth of the United States. I go from the Mississippi River in Louisiana all the way up through Missouri, and then west of that to Colorado and down to Southern California. So it's a very diverse part of the U.S. And so the different areas have different timings for when we'd want to make that dormant application of Marengo. So I'm going to illustrate that here in just a minute so that you can see kind of on an area by area how we would make those applications. Texas and Louisiana, we probably start our treatments sometime in mid-February. Usually around Valentine's Day would be ideal. Going just a little bit north to Oklahoma and Arkansas, we'd like to target March as our application date for pre-emergence herbicide applications during the dormant season. Look at those states that are in the northernmost part of my region: Colorado, Kansas, and Missouri, and even southern Illinois. We'll probably target sometime late in March, maybe even early April for an application time frame. And as we look out towards the southwestern part of my territory, that would be New Mexico, Arizona, and Southern California, we're probably looking at February as an ideal month to make an application. One of the things that we pay attention to out west is rainfall. We'd like to make the herbicide application just in advance of a rain event so that we can get the herbicide set in the soil after it's been applied. So that now that we have our Marengo application taken care of during the dormant season, late winter, just prior to spring, what about weeds that we might encounter during other seasons of the year, such as summer and fall? I've listed here a couple of suggestions because they fit a nice rotational mode with Marengo, in that all of these pre-emergence herbicides have different modes of action, which will help us to prevent any resistance that might occur with weed species. So during the summer, we might use something like dimethenamide P plus DNA type herbicide combinations. And then in the fall, we might consider using flumioxazin or flumioxazin combinations as our pre-emergent herbicides. And that should round out the herbicide applications that you would need to make up a very nice rotation for your nursery operation. So in addition to the fact that these herbicides not only are good rotational options because they have differing modes of action, but they also fit that idea of seasonality of weed control. Each of these herbicides fits the season very effectively. Okay, well, we've kind of talked through all of the different topics here today. I hope you found them to be of interest. As always, you can go back and replay this and get all of the details that you want. I also would encourage you to give me a call if you have a question, a specific question. Send me a text, send me an email. I'm going to post my contact information after we're finished here. And I wish you all the best this spring season. I know it's an important time of the year, and in particular this year, I'm really hoping and praying that everybody in the industry really has a profitable and a robust 2021 spring. Take care now.